Hi, everyone. Welcome to Game Changer Chat. I'm your host, Zakiya Mabry. We're going to be talking again about disability inclusion. This is part two of the discussion, and we have a wonderful panel to have a robust conversation about it. It's going to be interactive, so that means please put your questions down in the chat, and also please tell us where you're tuning in from in the world, whether it's in the US or across the pond. Let us know where you are. Right now, we're going to start with introductions. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Mimi, Leslie, Shelly, we appreciate all of you all being here today. So, we're going to start with Elizabeth, who I see first in the box. Elizabeth, please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you know about inclusion.
Thank you for having me on the show. I'm
Second
happy.
time around.
Yes, second time around. And I really enjoyed our previous conversation, and I'm honored to be here. And I'm president of the Holman Group, which is a mental health specialty plan nationwide. And we deal with diversity, inclusion, mental health, substance use, and it's all part of the same conversation. And I'm really excited to participate with your panelists who know a lot about the topic and to, share about anything and everything, and hopefully some about mental health and substance use, which would be my background.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you. We're so happy to have you here. Dr. Mimi, welcome. Tell us about yourself and your background.
Hi, Zakiya. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm very excited about this panel, but I do want to tell you a little bit about myself. As you said, my name is Dr. Mimi Rayleigh. I am a strategic career coach for high achieving Black women. I am also a public speaker and an author, and I am uniquely qualified to be in this discussion because I come from the standpoint of someone with visible and invisible disabilities. So I've had to be in the workforce for many years. I won't disclose that for my own sanity, but I've also done extensive research on Black women in senior leadership who persevere through depressive episodes. And that's where I'll offer my expertise tonight. So I'm super excited to be here, and thank you for the invitation.
Oh, you're most welcome. So glad to have you. And Leslie Allen, the Leslie Allen, the pro tennis coach. When I say pro, wait till you hear about her background. Leslie, welcome.
Zakiya and all the other panelists, I'm so honored to be here. And I guess your question about inclusion struck home with me because, as you said, I played on the professional tour, was ranked in the top 20, actually number 17 in the world. And at the time when I was doing it, women of color were not out there. So I was the inclusion in women's tennis in that moment in the 80s. And there are many factors that come into play, and how your mind is also a critical part. And so I struggled with depression, didn't really know what to call it back then, but I'm acutely aware of how stress can impact that. And now, rather than being on the court, I work with athletes and young people and young business professionals in my Win for Life program, which is really a mindset about persevering, overcoming obstacles, and making sure you have all the life skills you need off the court so you can be successful. Because the better you feel about how you can navigate a certain situation, the better you feel as a person. So what I teach helps anyone win for life.
Absolutely. Thank you, Leslie. And go, Shelly. Ask Shelly. That's her what we go by. She is a wealth of information. Ask Shelly. Shelly, go ahead. Tell us about yourself.
I am so honored to be on this panel. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we
Yeah,
can
awesome.
hear you.
I just want to make sure. So I am honored to be among these amazing women. Thank you so much for the invitation. I am a licensed psychotherapist here within the state of Florida. I was the CEO of Harmony Mental Health and Behavioral Services for 15 years. And we work with individuals with disabilities from the age of 2 to 99 and helping identify their abilities and their strengths,
Yes.
and what causes the dysfunctionality and how we can empower them and teach skills to help them to overcome. And that is what I have done. And so I don't see disability. I'm trained to see ability. I'm trained to see strengths. And I think that's the value that I bring to this discussion today. I am the CEO and owner of Ask Shelley Consulting, which is an emotional intelligence firm that helps corporations to achieve psychoeducation. I help corporations achieve peak performance through the provision of psychoeducation. So anybody that has any interaction with a human being, it's important to know why we think the way that we think, why we decide the way that we decide, what motivates us, what causes us to buy in, what causes us to opt out, things of that nature. And so I bring psychology to the business world and help leaders achieve their highest outcomes.
Wonderful. Again, welcome, Shelley.
Thank
Before we
you.
get to the individual questions, let me just throw this out there. What is the return on investment to have organizations hire individuals with disabilities?
I'll start.
Okay.
So there's a lot of great information out there about how companies are actually more financially successful and financially viable when they hire people, with disabilities, whether it's mental health or whether it's physical disabilities. And it also feels good as an organization to have such a diverse workforce where everyone can contribute to the collaboration, the brainstorming, the efficiency, the quality improvement. So Shelley should know, being also in healthcare, that we have measures and standards that actually tell us if we're on target or not. So when we're hitting those targets and we have a more inclusive workforce, it's a wonderful thing. And the government, believe it or not, which some people may not know, actually gives you money to have folks in your workforce, with disabilities. And, they say it only costs about $500 a year to accommodate somebody with a physical disability. I mean, for me, that's something that I could pay out of my own pocket, and that I gladly would pay to accommodate those individuals.
Absolutely. And that's real. And for me, someone who I've already disclosed, I have a disability. My disabilities, they don't cost anything. My disabilities mostly are non-apparent. You can't see with the visible eye, and a lot of the reasonable accommodations I need cost zero. So let's get into the individual questions. Shelley, how does your work at Harmony Behavioral Services, how has it impacted your viewpoint on disability specifically?
So my experience through Harmony Mental Health and Behavioral Services, we're talking about 15 years, definitely enforced a perspective that I had way before that. And so I think it was like my second year of college, and I was living off of, cheese sandwiches or something like that. I was offered a position in a residential facility for children, adolescents, and adults with a developmental disability. So that's where it started. And so my automatic response to what you just asked is that one of the ways that it has shaped my perspective is that I see ability and not disability. So in my 25 years of experience with working with individuals with disabilities from the age of 2 to 99, I learned very quickly that their abilities were profound. So I just want to give you two quick examples, and I'm going to make sure that I dive into your question. So think about a Caucasian 60-year-old with autism, nonverbal, aggressive towards self, major self-injurious behaviors, does not say a word until you yell out an artist's name and a year, and without any reference, he is able to verbalize every song released that year by that artist and who produced each one. Same person riding in the van, head down, sometimes drooling. You say to him, red car to your right. And he is able to verbalize the model, the make, and all the specifics for that vehicle without any aid. I remember a small autistic boy going into the home of the parents to conduct the intake. First time there. This is a little boy at that time, I think was about maybe 6 or 7 years old, sitting in a corner in a bubble, appears to be in his own world. I walk in, they say that he has no social contact. So they want him to build social skills so that he will be able to go to school. So I go in, he runs to me, he's touching my stomach, listening, and this happened for weeks. Parents are blown, don't understand why this little boy is consistently running up to me, touching my stomach. About 8 weeks later, I find out that I'm expecting. It's just so amazing. And so for 25 years, I've had the pleasure of finding strengths and abilities of the individuals that we work with in order to address any maladaptive behaviors that were impacting their ability to really maximize their functioning in their day-to-day lives. So I would literally encourage my staff every time we got a new intake to not review the packet or not even speak to the caregivers until you have had the opportunity to meet the individual and interact with them first. And that's only because a lot of the times the caretakers are coming in desperation. They're only focusing on limitations and they're not focusing on the possibilities. So the people around them, their support systems often create these glass ceilings and these limitations, and they never really truly see the true ability that the person has. I learned that disability does not evidence weakness. It's not an invitation to stare. It's not an invitation to jump in and help without permission, but it adds to the diversity that is beautiful and ought to be celebrated. One of the things that you said was, what is the return on the the ROI, the return on investment for companies? And one of the things as a corporate trainer that I always teach is that innovation is very important. It's a very important factor to get a business or a corporation or any business entity to success. Diversity promotes innovation, and innovation produces success. I mean, individuals with disabilities are major successful problem solvers. These are people that you want on your team. You want them at your table. You want them in the conference room. And so that's another thing that I learned. The third thing that I want to touch on very quickly is the suicide rate and the rising rate of suicide within individuals with disabilities. I think that anytime we are not operating in purpose and we're not doing what we are created for, it causes us to not have hope or no value. And so if we're not seeing value and seeing the individuals with disabilities as valuable, it's going to be hard for them to see that within themselves. And I think a lot of the reason why we see them turn to suicide is that they lose hope because they're not really flowing in purpose. And we have to be the ones to provide the opportunities for individuals to walk in their very unique gifts and die empty, just like all of us want to do, right? We all want to make sure that we are serving our purpose to the world. Those are the three major lessons I learned in my interactions with individuals with disabilities.
Wow, you said a lot, and a lot of impactful information there that I definitely can relate to from a professional and personal level. So thank you so much, Shelley. Leslie, as you're coaching coaches and working with parents and young people, can you please talk to us about how you're helping prepare the young people for being well-rounded individuals as they're entering the profession in whatever discipline of being an athlete, and how inclusion plays a part of that?
Thanks for that question. The one thing that I like to do, and what we do in Win for Life, is challenge the athletes or the young people and encourage them that they can do more than what they think they can, and they should expect more from themselves. So when you are in a situation, there are two ways that I deal with inclusion. Sometimes some of the athletes are wheelchair athletes, as in wheelchair tennis athletes, but because we're working on life skills off the court, it doesn't matter because you still need those life skills. So their ability or their disability doesn't really impact what happens on a day-to-day basis in the Win for Life training. On the other hand, if there is a situation where an athlete does have some sort of either emotional disability, what essentially I just want the parent to be, or the coach to be upfront about it so we can know how to manage it. Not like we're going to be giving them their medication or anything to that degree, but to make sure that whatever challenge that we create in the program is something that they can do so everybody can have a victory, and hold them to their standard. You can do this, and so you must try hard. The second component that happens with that, because we do a lot of interactive stuff and team and partnering and mentoring, so those that maybe don't have the learning disability can help the others, so that they learn some leadership skills. They see the benefit of inclusion. Sometimes that person is really fabulous at one of the other skills that nobody else in the group can do, and so they have a chance to shine. What was interesting when I was asked to be on this panel, I asked my daughter, what do you think about the term disability? And she's highly dyslexic and ADHD. And she said, oh, that's all right. We say we're learning disabled, but more and more what she says they do is they identify what it is that they have. Because that's something that's tangible, that's been diagnosed, and there are either protocols or medication for it. So rather than the blanket of I'm learning disabled, they're able to say I'm dyslexic, or I'm this, or I'm on the spectrum. And that's the world that young people are living in, because it's not so much of hide it, even within the Black community, it's not so much taboo. It's something that they talk about, and they sound like pharmacists when they start to compare. I take this, I take that, this, you take this, but it's just their norm. And I think when you have someone who has a learning disability and they're able to be, quote, mainstreamed, beautiful thing to see that they finally have an opportunity just to be like everybody else and be appreciated for what they bring to the table.
Wow. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the point that your daughter brought to the table at a very young age. She's learning to be her authentic self. And I commend her for that, because I'm just most recently, within the last couple of years, walking into being comfortable with talking openly about my disabilities. So kudos to her for already owning who she is.
Right.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, she is now a coach in college, and she does the recruiting. And so most times she will tell the recruits, because she can space out in a minute. And so the ones that are ADHD or dyslexic, they're like, I am too. It's like they made an instant connection. So I think when you're able to own what yourself and be authentic, you're able to do better, and people see you.
Right. I agree. Thank you for that. Dr. Mimi, you recently finished your PhD program, and I would love for you to share with us a little bit about your research that you did. I found it very interesting. So can you please share with us some of that?
Absolutely. Thank you. It's an excellent question. Now, my research specifically was studying Black women in senior leadership positions who persevered through depressive episodes. Now, what made this so unique is this is groundbreaking research. There is no other research at the intersection of these two phenomenon. So it's very exciting for me to get to explore that on a personal level, because I became the object of my research, and just as an opportunity to share with other Black women who share certain conditions or life experiences, to share with them so they know that they're not alone, and hopeful to break the stigma, or at least put a dent in it, especially in the Black community where it is such a strong stigma. But what I found from my research, there's such a vast variety of the journeys that these women have taken throughout their professional careers, the stages getting to their senior leadership positions. Their journeys are so vast, but the challenges that they faced were quite similar, and the opportunities that they found to be their success strategies were extremely similar, which I thought was so ironic. I thought I would be all over the place. Well, this worked for one person, this worked for one person, this worked for the third person, when in fact there was so much similarity. The journey itself extremely different, but the resources needed were the same, and the strategic methods that they used were quite similar. Now, what I did learn as being considered in the realm of inclusion, Black women in particular have dominated the workforce since the early 80s. And women in general occupy 51% of the workforce. So just statistically, we are the majority. And I know one of the other panelists spoke about how organizations benefit from having a variety of cultures, a variety of individuals with varying abilities, how that instills such a rich organizational culture. And that's priceless for the organizational growth and such like that. But I learned from these women that there are resources that are lacking in the workplace, but they had to be creative and strategic in finding those resources, those avenues for success outside of their organization as well. Things like sister circles or support groups, or even as simple as having mentors or sponsors within their organizations, all help these ladies propel to the highest levels of their careers. And I found it to be, one story just exciting as the next, but it just baffled me how disconnected the journeys were, but those intricate connections were so strong. Never 100%, but like 78% of the people, they feared retribution and getting help through their organization, or that there were not mentors provided in their organization, or they felt that they're, admitting this disability, this depression, even if when they didn't know what the title of it was, they didn't know what was going on, they knew that they were held to a higher standard, and that they're positioning themselves to get help or to even inquire, something's going on with me, it's not quite right. They knew it would impact their careers. So they were forced to internalize a lot of this, and that in itself causes a lot more stress and contributes to our mental and physical health. And it's just more likely that Black women in general will encounter depression or other mental health conditions, just because we have to deal with gender issues, race issues, sexism. We have all these things compounded, and so the odds are not in our favor. We're more likely to experience depression, whether it's diagnosed or not, than our counterparts. So that became a challenge in and of itself. But again, it's some amazing research, and I'm super excited about sharing all the results with everybody, and I'll save that for a little later in the broadcast.
Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate that information. And Elizabeth, Dr. Mimi was just talking about stress. So my question to you is, how do you identify stress or imbalances when people were so overwhelmed? We're in the COVID-19 era, we're dealing with a pandemic, and work-life balances is just really crazy. So how do people identify when they're having these stress and imbalances?
I think it can be challenging for anybody. Those that have, we're calling disabilities, even though we all agree that we don't like that word, that's a limiting vocabulary word.
Yeah.
For the purposes of this discussion, I'll use that word, even though it's not my favorite.
Okay.
And so I think for us in general, it's noticing that, we might be different, or we might be feeling different. That's a good start. In the workplace, we always talk about catching something when it's small. And so I'll give a simple example of, in a relationship, with the toothpaste cap being left off. Okay. And so that's something small, right? Or the toilet paper roll being on the wrong side. Are you an under toilet paper roll or an over? Right? What are you? We all know what we prefer. And if we have roommates or family members, we may not be communicating that. We might just be irritated that it's not the way that we want it to be. So it starts with an awareness, which a lot of us don't have when we're stressed or we're depressed or we're dealing with challenges. It's too hard to even articulate that that's a preference or that that's irritating me and even discussing that. So it starts with what we call early identification, early identifying when the problem is very small instead of letting it fester and fester and fester. I want to just briefly touch on that there is an increase in domestic violence right now and child abuse. We're having a lot of reports at our workplace because people are now locked up, so to speak, with people that they don't spend a lot of time with.
Right.
How do we create that safe space? We take a walk. We listen to, Shelly has the earbuds on. We go to our favorite song or our favorite podcast. We listen to Zakiya, right? We listen to her broadcast to kind of de-stress and escape the world. So self-care is very, very important. With the nail salons, the hair salons, the gyms closing, right? At least where I am in Los Angeles, we barely got a 4-week break where we had to rush in while they were open and now they're closed again. So can I take a hot shower? Can I read my favorite book? Can I eat that wonderful piece of cake that I'm craving? What can I do to really take care? And that's identifying that I don't know I'm stressed. I just know that I need to take care of myself right now and I'm off. I'm cranky. I'm irritable. I raised my voice and I didn't mean to. So we teach that in the workplace. We teach human resources and managers to help with early identification of stress and anxiety. And we talk about over communication. Text your family member, text your coworker, use your Spark or your instant messaging, get on your video platform with your teams, with your families. How many of you have done a family reunion or want to do a girls chat or a family chat or check in on your neighbors? So it's about connection, communication, self-care, and also letting somebody help you when they're noticing that you're off or you're stressed.
Those are all very good points and good recommendations. One side of my family, we're starting to do a once a month call, and actually, hopefully, the person who took the lead of that, I hope they changed it from a call to a Zoom because I would love to see their faces. But that's a very good recommendation. So now we turn to Shelly, and I'm going to ask you, let's discuss the impact of conscious or unconscious bias on one's mental health. And before you answer that, I'm going to ask all the people who are viewing right now, if you could hit the like and share button. If you're getting anything out of this discussion, or if you're just watching it, just please go ahead and hit like. Please, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much. And the question was, again, let's just discuss the impact of conscious and unconscious bias on one's mental health.
So I tend to teach the way that I learn. So just bear with me. So when I'm not in a suit and I'm not teaching the world to be well, I am extremely adventurous. So one day I went out and got a used Mustang. It was red. It was 2007, a Shelby Kobe. What is it? What is the engine? Whatever the best engine is.
Okay.
And so a Cobra engine, because I called him Kobe.
Okay.
And the issue with the Mustang was this, because I bought it and then I realized why it was so cheap, because it had this issue that was very hard to correct. So the thermostat would read the temperature in the car incorrectly. And because of that, it would read it would read the temperature much higher than it was. And because of that, the whole car would shut down because it would respond to the reading as if it was overheating, even though it wasn't. But because the reading was corrupted and because the reading was flawed, it caused the entire vehicle to respond to something that wasn't true. And so the engine would shut down and I would have to pull over to the side of the road because the reading was incorrect. And that's what implicit bias is. The marches and the momentum and the things that we're doing in this day and age to assure that we are addressing inequity and disparities and inequality and injustice and things of that nature. A lot of what we're seeing is explicit bias, very conscious. I am calling you this, I'm demeaning you, I believe that you are inherently weaker. That's very explicit, but studies show that implicit bias, that unconscious bias, what's in your subconscious mind that is really leading and guiding the way that you behave and the way that you make decisions, is equally damaging than what we're seeing as explicit. So how does that deal with your mental health? Our mental health guides the way we see the entire world. So when you are a judge and you have this implicit bias, then that means that you have a preference for and a precedence against a people. And that's very damaging. That means that the way that you're thinking, your thermostat is corrupt. So so your attitudes, your behaviors, your actions are responding to thoughts and beliefs that are very corrupted. A lot of the times, this implicit bias have been implanted in us by learned behavior, right? Learned ideas. And sometimes when those ideas are against the true essence of who we are as humans, that's emotional injury. When you teach a child how to hate someone because of the hue or the color of their skin, you have just injured that child. You have just injured because you have implanted a lie into this fresh child's mind. And so implicit bias is exactly that. It is considered, because emotional disturbances are on a spectrum, right? It starts with minor emotional disturbances all the way to severe and persistent mental illness. And we all fall somewhere between these two poles. And so when we're looking at dysfunctionality and measure the impact of the mental issue by measuring how functional or dysfunctional someone is, that's how we determine how we treat the mental illness. How do we cause the person to overcome their growth potentials? And so having a mindset that causes you to be maladaptive in the way that you think and behave is that's dysfunction. It causes emotional disturbances. You have these fears that are rooted in irrationality, right? And so you have this belief system that's so automatic that causes you to speak to people who are in a wheelchair as if they have the cognitive capacity of a 5-year-old.
Right.
Like all of a sudden, now that you are observably disabled, or if you have verbalized you're disabled, then all of a sudden I start to speak very slowly because somehow it has been implanted in my mind that someone in a wheelchair has to be spoken to in this way. That's an emotional issue. That's a mental issue. I call that mental illness. Are not able to see the value in people, not be able to honor them for who they are. Who are you to take a stereotype and judge what someone's ability is? That's dysfunctional, and that is illness.
100%. You nailed it. It was mentioned during the May panel discussion. Someone texted me, I won't disclose who, Elizabeth brought up to the point similar to what you're saying, that people who have biases or stereotypes against age, talking about people like generation, the millennials, that's wrong too. Thinking about like, well, I don't really want to work with the millennials, and verbalizing that out loud. How do you think that makes the millennials feel? So we all need to be conscious about our words, because words actually do hurt. So yes, the
Absolutely.
communication piece.
And when it comes to inclusion, I just want to say this very last thing. When it comes to disability inclusion, we have to, implicit bias will cause us to do things. And I think, Zakiya, you said this back in May whenever we shared the panel together. I don't know if that was May or June. The quarantine has my timing completely off. But we don't want this to be something that people just check off of their list. Right? We don't want you to choose individuals with disabilities that could fit into your structure.
Yes.
So you need to reformat your structure to give people opportunity to all.
Yes.
And that is what disability inclusion is about.
Absolutely. You nailed it. Thank you for that. Thank you. Woo. Okay. I'm trying to regroup because that was really good. Leslie, can you please tell us when you were back there actually working with some of the greatest tennis players of all times, and now we're going through a lot of just civil unrest? What does it mean to you to now have to almost go full circle with doing that all over again? I know we're talking specifically about disability inclusion, but I like to tell people that it's not separate from the diversity inclusion talk. So I just want to get your perspective on diversity and what it meant from what you were doing in the 80s and 90s to what you're doing right now.
So I think I would speak to the standpoint of with diversity and unconscious bias, that first of all, being a Black woman is exhausting when you're trying to navigate in a white world. It's just exhausting because at every moment there's a microaggression against you. And if I put it in terms of my opponent, who was probably, was going to be a white person, and me, my journey just to the courts on a given day, I faced a lot of microaggressions. When I came downstairs in the hotel, can I help you? Well, I'm at the transportation desk. I want to get a ride to the courts. When I arrive at the arena, the guard stops me. The blonde girls go by. Can I help you? Yeah, I'm a player. You don't have your badge. I just arrived. I'm going to pick up my badge. They get on the phone. We have someone here who says they're in the tournament. Can you please verify? So the white girls call back and say, yeah, she's one of us. So, I mean, I could go on at each step of the way, and how unconscious bias kind of picks at you and picks at you and picks at you. So you see it coming, like, okay, here we go. So it was interesting when now in 2020, I'm writing about some of my experiences, and that players or people of color are still feeling or experiencing some of those same things. And one particular several times over Wimbledon champion texted me on Twitter, or tweeted at me and said, I didn't realize that you had it so tough. And what I had experienced was not so tough, not like Althea Gibson, but my thought was, wow, if I didn't have to go through that, think of how much better I could be. And I think that would also correlate to people in business, Black women in business. If you don't have to deal with all that stuff with each step and each turn, how much better could they do? How much more could they excel? So that's a little bit about unconscious bias, but all of that also has an impact on you because you keep it inside, and it's not healthy. And I was just in a mindset that I had to persevere. I was on my own. I couldn't let down the race. So that is depressing, and you do get depressed, but you can't deal with it. Not for me, it wasn't so much the stigma. It was just that I have to excel, because if I don't, somebody else coming behind me might not. The talk in the locker room is much more open. In our professional locker room, you couldn't even talk about retirement or making a plan for retirement, because then that meant you weren't committed to being the best player you could be. And the same way, you didn't talk about any mental issues, though we saw a whole arc of many people that were crazy, for lack of a better word. But now within the tour, they at least are developing the whole person trying to provide services. And what I do now with Win for Life is to try and get that kind of athlete person balance, and don't just define yourself by your sport or by your ranking or your performance, because how you are as a person is going to last a lot longer than your sports career. So you really need to know yourself, be comfortable being your authentic self, and learning how to speak up for yourself. So today there's a lot of roadkill of people that have the pipe dream that they're going to be spectacular, and then they're not prepared for anything else after that if they get injured or it doesn't happen. So I want athletes and young people to be prepared for whatever their next is. And one of my mentees, I'd given them assignment just last week to do something. It was a simple task. And then he came back and said, oh, I couldn't find the whatever. So I wrote to him and I said, well, what kind of effort was that on a scale of 1 to 10? So he had to admit it was a 6. And I was like, 6 doesn't get you much. So you have to decide why you were okay with giving a 6 effort and work towards doing better. And so I think in young people being engaged today, it's important, but they should not identify themselves as strictly one thing, because you need to be many things in order to really move and groove in the world. There's only a few people that have one name and have really accomplished something. Most of us have to do a variety of things in the course of our life. And the more you can deal with people who are different or not like you or interact with people, the better you're going to be and the more you're going to learn.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I agree with that. Let me go to the phone for comments. Ryan says, you are seriously inspiring. John says, hey, hi Z, hi Shelly, go squad. Charles says, we can easily use words of inclusive without having a mindset of inclusion. And heavy hitters tonight is a comment. So people are liking the conversation. So next, we're going to go to Dr. Mimi. And why do you think that the lived experience is so important? As we're looking, and a lot of the conversation has been about the stigma associated with especially mental health, but it's just disabilities overall, whether it's a physical disability or mental health, there's a lot of stigma. But when telling your story, or having a conversation about disability inclusion, why is it important that the lived experience be told?
Excellent question. I think that lived experience offers a sense of validity to your journey, to your struggle. And though it's not necessarily for the person on the receiving end of that story, but it's for ourselves to acknowledge, yes, I've had some challenges. Yes, some things have kept me from being normal per se, or being like everyone else. I heard that a lot in my research. I just want to be like everybody else. But it gives us also acknowledgement on how we are overcoming or utilizing our varying abilities to have success in large accomplishments and even small accomplishments. Now, I will say, as a person, I have some severe visual impairments, and that's not a new impairment for me. I've had that all my life. So what that has required me to do, and the way my life has groomed me, is I've had to overcompensate.
Let's just give it one moment. She popped out before, so I'm pretty sure she's going to pop right back in.
Can I say something while we're waiting?
Yes.
One of the things, and I forget who was talking about it, but in your study with Black women, or trying to identify the small things, it was, you got to give yourself permission to not be 100%. and then you can get help.
That's a good point. Thank you for that. Dr. Mimi, welcome back. Can you hear us? Mimi.
Hi, I can hear you. Can you see me?
Yeah, we can see you and hear you. So you were in the middle of answering your question.
Okay, perfect. And I apologize for that. I think it's important for us to acknowledge our successes in defining our varying abilities, abilities that mainstream may not have because they are dependent on their vision or their visual acuity per se, which was my case. So they haven't tapped into those other internal resources that we have to cause us to level our own playing field. And I think sharing our stories again gives us a personal validity in knowing that we can overcome many things and that we are uniquely qualified to find our own ways of overcoming. And I say that in terms of as an adult with visual disabilities, it is my responsibility, it's my self-awareness to let my employer know, again, not here's what I can't do, but here's how I'm challenged, and this is what I need to minimize that challenge, or to keep me in a position that levels my playing field to
You're doing
do
great.
the work
Technology
that's
during
prescribed
COVID.
by
This
my
is
job
fantastic.
description and things like that. But it has been a wonderful thing. It's been wonderful, and I really appreciate the accommodations that are being made. And but about the stories that each individual shares, it's good to see, as I mentioned before, even though the stories and the journeys are vast, there are commonalities.
Just one moment. I think Mimi will be right back with us. As she's doing that, let me look to see. Everybody who's watching this, if you would just like and share and type any questions that you have for the panelists down in the comment section, it'll be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. Okay, while we're waiting for Mimi to come back, I'm just going to go ahead to the next question to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, when we're talking about solutions, can you please share with us the benefits of a successful assistant employee?
Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. Yes, Mimi. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, that's a sign my answers are too long. My answers are too long. That's a sign.
All right. So would you like to finish your final thoughts for that question?
I would. I'm sorry. I will be brief. Sharing the stories gives us a sense of a camaraderie against others who have varying abilities as well. We find comfort in groups knowing, it's not just us. We're not going through this alone, and we're not the only ones faced with certain challenges. And it builds a rapport. It also provides an opportunity for empathy from our peers or our leadership or those who we have to work with on a daily basis or interact with on a daily basis. So we have an opportunity to educate and grow together as units instead of just individuals going through life on their own journey. People become an integral part as we all grow.
That makes total sense. Thank you so much for that answer. Elizabeth, let's start thinking about some viable solutions. And we know the Employee Assistance Program is one. Can you walk us through what that is and what a successful program looks like?
Yes, thank you. So in the workplace, we have the Employee Assistance Program, which a lot of times is a free resource for the employees, their family members, and the employer, managers, human resources. It also acts as a training mechanism. So a lot of times people will want diversity training, or they'll want sexual harassment training, or they'll want team building. And so that goes nicely into the topic that we're talking about, in that, the first step for an organization is to bring in this type of training. And Employee Assistance Program is just short-term counseling with community resources to help somebody and support them while they're struggling. So for example, if you have a individual that's homeless in the workplace, their employer may not know that they're homeless, or might not even know how to deal with or to accommodate what their needs are. And so also you have individuals that have food sensitivity issues, meaning that they're actually, can't afford to put food on the table, even though they're holding down a job and working. And they're barely doing that at that. And they need all the support that they can get in the workplace. So that's a good sign if a company has an employee assistance program in addition to their regular medical or health benefits. And also linking people with nonprofits in the community. A lot of what we do at our work is an individual comes in, it's not just one issue. It's not just legal. It's not just marital. It's not, dealing with there's no school, there's no summer camps. I'm going to pull my hair out. I don't know what to do. And we're all at home together. It's what community resources are available for me. So that is definitely one solution. And what I like about what we do is that it's not one size fits all. It's how can we have a dialogue and a conversation? And, if you're having this issue with one individual or between two individuals, it's probably a good representation of what's going on in your organization as a whole. And, while you think you can have some mediation or some private training or even counseling for these individuals, if it's coming up, it's affecting your whole organization. It's happening at an organizational level if it's happening with individuals, especially if the individuals are managers, executives, even board members in an organization. That's something that, you need to address both individually and globally. What comes to mind is we all remember Starbucks having recently the big issue in the news and needing to have diversity training. Well, they have a long way to go since that incident. And, they've been kind of stepping on their tail, so to speak. They had an incident in the news after that. So, obviously Starbucks as an organization would be a prime candidate for, they have a long way to go. And just simply having diversity training is not enough, because it's not happening from the bottom up, the top down, the middle sideways. It's not enough. You've got to walk the talk, you've got to live it, breathe it, and it starts at home. So we talked about implicit bias earlier, right? How we act. And I tell my kids, we're working on perfecting certain skills and being nice. And I say, if you are not nice at home to one another, both, my twins are boys, 11, and they like to fight for some reason. And we're practicing kindness and being kind to one another, because you're going to continue to be mean to your friend because you're so close to your friend and treat him like your brother, right? So you have to practice so it's natural and it's ingrained, or you're going to be one person at home, one person at work, and you can't keep up with that. You can't keep up with all those personalities. And I don't remember if it was Leslie earlier, what she said about, we have to be able to bob and weave in society. And we are a member maybe of a religious group. Maybe we volunteer at a nonprofit. Maybe we go to athletic lessons with our children or our nieces and nephews or our grandchildren. Maybe we are a neighbor. Maybe we like to buy Girl Scout cookies. Whatever it is, we have multiple hats and multiple roles. So what I would say back to solutions is that it starts at home. It starts with a dialogue, and it starts with educating yourself. I like to do a lot of reading on what I don't know, right? And I like to come prepared to the conversation. And I am also the first one to be honest and say, I didn't know that, or I didn't experience that. And what you're saying is really eye-opening for me. Instead of saying, well, I'm not that way, or I haven't experienced that, I can't relate to that. And I really like what's being discussed here today, because I have not experienced that as a Caucasian woman. I have not. Though as a woman in insurance, yes, I've experienced discrimination. I've experienced harassment. And insurance was, Caucasian male dominated since the early 80s, and it's a wonder that we have as many women today in healthcare and insurance, and we have a long way to go.
Thank you for that. That's why this is the rock star panel. I love the synergy that is going on and all the information. I know time is ticking and that we just scratched the surface with this conversation. But before we wrap up, I just want to ask this question. What positive affirmation do you all say to yourself? Just one by one, can you just say, for me, it's you got this, Zakiya. You're bad. You can do this, because there's a lot of days when I can't barely get out of bed. Sometimes I can't get out of bed. So I have to speak positive affirmations to myself, because sometimes if I don't do it, who is going to do it? So what positive affirmations do you say to yourself?
I have 25. So
that's why you're so full of it. Okay.
Yes, that I prophetically declare, because I believe in 2020 our mouths become a birthing room.
Okay.
But I am qualified. I am enough. I am an answer to a world problem.
Wow. Beautiful, Shelley. Leslie, what do you say?
Mine is that I deserve the best, which means I should have the best coming to me, and people that I deal with, I expect the best out of them. And I'm going to go a little bit off topic, but when we were talking about how can diversity and inclusion or disability inclusion work, I think wherever it's implemented, there needs to be accountability.
Yes.
Not just the pop-up 45 minutes. Okay, we had our D&I training.
Yes.
There has to be accountability
Absolutely.
attached to metrics, salary,
Yes.
whatever.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Leaders who are watching this, please write that down. Yeah. Dr. Mimi, what affirmations do you say to yourself?
Well, I do say that I am enough, but I also say I bet on myself every time. You have to show up for yourself and represent yourself the best way you can. So I'm with our panelists who has about 25. There's so many awesome ones, but I'm not going to be resigned to these two, but right now those are my two that I'm currently working through.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I love it. Elizabeth, what do you say to yourself?
There's a lot that I say in different circumstances. I'll do the short version. Blame it on my dad, right? He made me tape affirmations on the mirror and read it every day. And
that's good.
So I love you and God loves you just the way you are. So
that's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so Elizabeth, what are your final words, and tell us anything amazing that you or your organization is going to be doing in 2020?
So we're basically in 2020, we're surviving COVID, right? We're trying to cope with COVID and delivering services. We've implemented, what I'm excited about is telehealth and telemedicine within our organization to help people that have been underserved and underrepresented, people in rural areas, and also by phone. As the government has lifted restrictions on delivering services, we're actually providing autism services certain aspect of the services by phone and by video. And so those services don't have to be interrupted or disrupted due to COVID. So that's been very, very exciting as the government has actually been being more lenient with providing those services. And I think down the line, just, more topics, more conversations, enhancing our website to be, more inclusive, and, getting feedback and meeting partners like you all is my goal, to do more of what we're all doing right now. And you didn't ask for the book yet. Should I throw in what book I'm reading real quick, or are you going to be Since we're running out of time, I actually started reading White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. Are you reading that right now?
Yes, that's a good one. Yes.
So a lady from, it was a working mom's parent support group when our kids were 6 months old. She's an attorney. She posted on Facebook that the library had just got the book in and the library was now closed due to COVID. And I respect this woman immensely. And I thought, well, why don't I get the book? I've never heard of it, and I'd like to read it, especially with everything going on. And I'm reading it, and it's just, I cry very easily. I'm very sensitive. And today is actually the 5th year anniversary of the passing of my mother.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And, I know my mother would be really happy with where I am today and where I want to go. And so I'm reading this book, and I am committed to making a difference and to thinking differently, and to, I like to have empathy. And even though I can't be in your shoes, I'm a Caucasian woman, I will never be African American. I would like to understand and to be compassionate and have empathy and to make a difference where I can. I would like to help lift your community up, lift your family up, lift you up, network, give you opportunities, anything that I can do to be of service. For 2020, I want to be of service. So.
That's amazing. And you're a dynamic inclusion leader. Thank you for what you do. Dr. Mimi, parting words, and tell us what exciting things you're doing in 2020.
Okay. Parting words, we definitely have to keep dialogue going about diversity and inclusion, about mental health issues, to break stigmas on all those fronts. It's very important, and I think the open dialogue is the primary way. So I appreciate your platform, Zakiya, for giving us an opportunity to share our experiences and our expertise. What I have going on for 2020, I am getting my research published. I'm also working on another book that may be in the form of ebook before the
She'll come back.
Oh yeah, she'll be right back. Those viewing, please don't forget to hit like and share with your friends. That's my plug.
I'm going to talk about the books. So I got the White Fragility book. It was like sold out on Amazon and had a ridiculous delivery date. But I had a friend that lent it to me, and I'm also reading The Color of Law.
Oh, awesome.
What should I expect, Zakiya? I haven't started it yet. I got it though.
I haven't too. I haven't finished. I haven't even started. I've been so busy.
I heard The Color of Law and White Fragility were the best 2 places to start. So that's what I did.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, Dr. Mimi, welcome back. Okay, so you were telling us you're going to get your book published, and what?
I'm sorry, I think I covered it.
Okay.
The two books, just getting those published, and going on a public speaking circuit, which now is going to be more along the lines of our Zooms or our social live platforms, but just speaking about women in leadership experiencing the depression. And also I'm coordinating a program that brings into corporations a way to train their internal candidates for leadership. I know people are paying attention to Black women, and as a result of all of our social injustice platforms that we're experiencing now. So I'd like to teach organizations how to train within their own organizations, the women that are currently there, to groom them for leadership positions. So I am getting together some content to establish that with the corporations. But that's it. But that makes for a very busy end of the year.
Oh, absolutely. You're going to be very busy this second half of the 2020. Congratulations on all the work you're doing. And Leslie,
Yes.
please share your final thoughts and the work that you're going to be doing for this final part of 2020.
I think this has just been a great forum, because the more you can talk about something, the easier it is to erase the stigma around disability, mental illness, all of those things. So 3 things. 1, I will be launching a podcast with another colleague who's an African-American former pro tennis player. Podcast is called Passing Shots.
Oh,
We've had a variety of experiences, from being professional athletes, coaches, sports executives, and just Black women navigating the globe. So that's coming up. It's called Passing Shots. The Win for Life training that I usually go to people to do, I'm doing a cohort virtually for athletes, limited number. So if you are a parent of an athlete, coach of an athlete, or know someone, they can apply to be part of the cohort to do the Win for Life training, helping them with their life skills, particularly since a lot of fall sports are going to be canceled. So this is something for them to focus on and to be developed. And I'm also doing public speaking. And there's a documentary about Althea Gibson and Arthur Ashe, and I'm featured pretty prominently within that. So we talk about their activism, their why we know more about Arthur Ashe versus Althea Gibson. So it becomes a gender, race situation. So that's prime for colleges to go and speak to them, because they have diversity on some college campuses, but it's very segregated. So want to help people begin to have the conversation. So, so that's what I'm doing.
Well, you're going to be really busy, Leslie. Thank you so much
I
for
hope
sharing that. And Shelley, share your final thoughts and what are you going to be working on for the rest of 2020?
So lower benchmarks of expectation causes people to see individuals with disabilities as a threat when we're talking about inclusion. And so the only way to counteract that is to dovetail into what Leslie was saying, is accountability and making sure that we provide opportunities for education. Our brains cannot shift without new information. And so with that new information and making sure that we're holding people accountable to those policies and procedures and all the declared visions and missions and objectives is important. And so continuing to be a change agent in the business sector, like really going out and teaching the truth behind implicit bias and how those are established, helping people to understand the how is something that I'm very committed to, and making sure that I also educate the psychology behind disparities, the psychology behind oppression, and making sure that I take the opportunity, my platform as a consultant, as a corporate trainer, using that platform to effect change one life at a time. So I have a book that is in the final edit stage, Struggling to Keep the Vows. It's me and I think about 6 other co-authors that came together to write the book. And the reason why I'm so excited about it is because as we are focused on really building our people and building the esteem and the economic wealth amongst people of color, we have to remember that strong marriages promote strong families, and strong families promote strong communities, and strong communities promote a strong nation. And so if we can go back to that unit, that the unit between a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, and really learn to build on that and to strengthen that is very important to me. And so it's a life calling. I'm also going to be releasing a second book on parenting. I can't release the name now because I'm still on the final stages of writing that. But I think it's important to truly maximize our skills. I think that people automatically assume that parents just know, but skilled parenting is about having the actual acquired skill to truly overcome problem behavior, attach to our children, connect with our kids in a very unique way, and still not lose the authority that you have in the midst of connecting with them. And so the book teaches parents on how to do that. And the third thing is my daughter left the nest last year. So she goes to Fordham and the Alvin Ailey School of Dance in New York. So she's already left the nest. My son will be leaving the nest next year. So I will smother the living life out of him this last year before he leaves the nest. That's it.
Okay. Well, you're going to be staying busy, and please don't leave kisses marks on his cheek when he's taking his pictures and all that, because I don't know if he's going to really like that too much. But and going to our messages, we have one more from Mark, who all the way from Australia, who was a panelist yesterday. He said we should set target numbers for people with disabilities we employ, and of course we need to talk about the skills and the jobs. So going back to the matrix that was talked about, yes, we need to look at the matrix when we're looking about disability inclusion and diversity overall. And Zakiya says, great conversation. I'm changing the world one conversation at a time. So this has been a great panel. I would like to say, as far as your contact information, when I get off of this, we're going to tag you on the LinkedIn so everyone can get in direct contact with you if they need to catch up with you for any reason. And as far as what I'm doing, as far as next month, I'm going to be having a new masterclass called Thrive. And you can go to the thriveclass.com to learn more information about it. It's geared towards leadership, middle managers in the D&I space, and just in general. So find more information by going to the thriveclass.com. This has been Zakiya Mabry with Game Changer Chat. Thank you to everyone tuning in into our elite panel. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Peace, love, and many blessings. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome.